Bring us into 39, Danny. What are we looking at?
Oh man. Well, so Joseph, um, he ends up in a situation where he was bought from the Midianites, sold into Egypt, and he was bought by Potiphar, and so Potiphar is going to take him into his house, and he's going to allow him to serve in his home. And Potiphar would have been the second in command, in a sense, in all of Egypt. Would have been the emperor or Pharaoh's right hand man. And then Joseph ends up catching the eye of Potiphar's wife. And apparently Joseph's a strapping, good-looking young man. And so he catches Potiphar's wife, and Potiphar is like, hey, look, man, I'd really like for you to come lay with me. And yeah, a long story. I mean, she ends up, in a way, she kind of traps him, and then ends up where he runs from her, but yet, because somebody comes in, she starts yelling and making it look like that Joseph has actually assaulted her. And of course, they're going to believe her and all that. And he gets thrown into prison for that. And so it's kind of the beginnings of that. And it's a horrible situation. He has done nothing to deserve, being put into prison. He did nothing wrong. He was an upstanding, servant in that household. And so they believed Potiphar's wife, and here he is in prison.
Well, so I mean, somebody's trying to do the right thing and gets a false accusation. I mean, I can attest to how damaging that is to
Absolutely.
the ego, the family, the thought processes, and really creates a self-reflection kind of thing, or what's the word I'm looking for? What could I have done better, right? What could I have done different
Mm-hmm.
to completely have avoided having that happen to him? But he arose in Potiphar's house, right? He became a well-respected dude.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, Potiphar like trusted him really, really good. And so
Gave him
this knocked him.
responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, he started out as just a regular servant dude, rose his way up and had a huge responsibility in Potiphar's house.
Mm-hmm.
Very well respected. But had a false accusation that was believed on the other side. Nobody, I mean, there's no indication in Scripture here that anybody even cared what Joseph had to say about the matter. It was what she said, and so he was put into prison because of that.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks, man.
No, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a reason he goes to prison.
Yeah. God used that too, right?
I think it's crazy. I mean, there's so many things that happened to him, but you look at, I mean, because we have the whole Scripture to look at, we already know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph didn't know what was
No.
going to happen, and I think at some point, man, he had to have been sitting in the middle of a prison cell going, God, I trust you. I believe in your word and your promises. I've done nothing but good for you, and I'm sitting here, and I just want to know what they don't give me Joseph's feelings in Scripture. I want to know what Joseph was thinking. Was he saying, God, why have you allowed this to happen? Or was he saying, God, I can't believe that I've done all this for you, and here I am stuck in this. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's saying here.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I wonder, when we were talking about that, and Joseph wondering what in the world is going on. Why are these things happening to me? Paul didn't have those same thoughts. Of course, we get a little bit of better understanding of him and all that, but he saw those opportunities being in prison as opportunities, right? Here's a guard I can share the gospel with, and here's this person I can share the gospel with, and I'm going to do what I can while I'm in prison to share the gospel with those around me and bring people to the Lord, which he did. And I kind of wonder what, was Joseph mature enough in his faith at that point in time to be thinking that way? Or was he, like you said, is he kind of like, man, God, what do I need to do to not get in these situations? All I've done is follow you, and I get sold into, get sold off by my brothers, and And here I am. I've kind of made it up to a position, of authority and within this home and of some comfort, I would assume, in this home. And then all of a sudden, just I get accused of something I didn't do. I don't know what he's thinking.
I don't either. We get a clue in verse 3 of 39. We get a clue. It says, his master observed that the Lord was with him and that the Lord made everything he was doing successful. So how in the world does Potiphar observe that the Lord is with Joseph? And to be able to give credit to the Lord for everything being successful. So verse 4, so Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal attendant. This is how he rose up. He rose up because his master observed that the Lord was with him and the Lord made everything successful. I wonder how that happened. How does Potiphar see that in Joseph? You think it's the way he carries himself?
Yeah.
Is it very much like when we read the New Testament, it says, let your light shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven? Is this what's happening with Joseph?
Yeah. I think it's got to be that. Because I think, we've all met people, that Jesus is just exudes, comes out of their pores. It's just who they are, and you can almost, by being around them, just get the sense that of who they are, that they are Holy Spirit driven people, and the Spirit of God is all over them, and just by the way that they conduct themselves, and I would imagine that so much of it has to do with attitude about everything. He was doing his work as unto the Lord, right? So he did a really good job, obviously, with everything that he did. And that, of course, that's one of the reasons why that so much of what he did, God allowed to be fruitful, to be successful at, because he honored the Lord. And it's one of those kind of things where when we live our lives, we ought to be living it in such a way that people go, man, what is Jeff got? What's going on in Jeff that he can endure all of that? Because that's the other part of it. I think that, okay, so Joseph, he's essentially a slave, although a favored slave in that household, but yet he doesn't act like one. He acts differently. There's something different about him. And so people can see that difference no matter what's going on. And that's really kind of the way that, it's an example for all of us. We all ought to be living our lives and working in our lives in such a way that people can see that.
So Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving.
Yep.
I mean, that's how I would see like Joseph's attitude right here too. Going down to verse 21, so he's been put in prison out of this false accusation. There's no getting around this. Like, he's not getting out of this. There's no court in the world that he just gets to go to prove his case. The people that he would have to prove his case to would be Potiphar, and so Potiphar's going to listen to wife, not servant.
Sure.
Anyway, so he gets put into prison. Verse 21, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness. He granted him favor in the sight of the prison warden. This is interesting because it's not the first time we've seen this, but the Lord was with Joseph. What does that mean? Do we think that Joseph could feel the presence of the Lord with him?
Boy, I do. Yeah. Because I can feel the presence of the Lord with me. Especially if I'm doing what I know He wants me to do.
Yeah.
Not so much when I'm not. But there is something about that. I've had a conversation not all that long ago with somebody, and we were talking about something kind of similar to this, and that there's just nothing that feels better. When you know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for God. God is leading you to do something, and you're doing that. But what's really kind of cool is that you can see, because you're being obedient and you're being faithful, and God allows you to see kind of what He's doing in real time, right? In real time, being able to see that. And I think we get I think that's maybe a little bit of what Joseph seeing here, because it's got to be more than to a jailer for Joseph. Oh, Joseph's a nice guy, so I'm going to treat him good. Well, I don't get the sense that jailers were all that friendly, a group of personnel. I
Yeah.
think they've heard every story in the book. I'm not guilty. I know you've heard plenty of those
Yep.
in your career.
Yep.
I didn't do it. I'm not guilty. And so, but so God had to turn hearts, and I would have to think that as faithful as Joseph has been, I would have to think that he seeing that in real time, and recognizing that, wow, okay, God is doing something here.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. We've seen him as a servant elevated to respect by his owner.
Mm-hmm.
We see him now as a jailer. I'm sorry, as a prisoner
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be, and already, verse 21, he was granted him favor in the sight of the prison warden. So the warden, verse 22, put all the prisoners under Joseph's care. He was in charge of whatever they were doing. So now Joseph's in charge of, so like, boom, you're lowest and now you've been elevated. Boom, you're lowest and now you've been elevated. Do we see any kind of foreshadowing, do you think, in this scenario with Joseph, that maybe we'll see something similar moving up?
Yeah, I think I think absolutely. We see that. We can see that. We talk about sometimes about how you can see Jesus all the way through Scripture. You
Yeah.
can see so many similarities or parallels and things like that. And of course, all of Scripture points to Jesus, and I think we see that here. Where Jesus is lifted up, but he's brought down, and then he's lifted up again to his rightful place. Yeah,
To death. People wanted to kill
to
him
death.
too,
Yeah,
and did.
absolutely.
They
Indeed.
succeeded, right? But I mean,
Right. Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
So he gets in prison. Now he's the
Mhm.
dream guy.
Yeah,
What do they call it? What are those Indian things called? Dream catchers?
dream
He's the dream
catchers.
catcher.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Now, what do they call those guys in prison? What's the term that they use for them? The ones that are they get to go around, and the trustee.
Trustee? Yeah.
Yeah, trustee. They get to hand out the books or whatever it is they do in there.
Yep. They're a little more trusted. Yep.
Yeah, he becomes
and
kind
some
of a
of 'em-
trustee in a sense.
Yeah. And some of them will actually do like regular office work stuff, They'll be able to come out of the prison and do secretarial work or office work or whatever. And it's the trusted prisons who they let go out on the highway and pick up trash off the, side of the street outside the walls of the prison and stuff. I don't know that they had something like that back then, but I mean, obviously it says he was in charge of all the other prisoners. He was in charge of everything they did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for Joseph. I don't know what that means for prison back then. I don't know if he was in charge of recreation. Everybody come outside, do jumping jacks, stretch and whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know if he was a recreation planning committee or or what. I don't know.
Right.
But so these dreams, I think, are interesting. We don't really have to hash out the entire dream or anything, but we have a dream of the cupbearer and the baker. So we haven't even got to Pharaoh's dreams yet, but the cupbearer and the baker now the cupbearer is in prison. Does it say why he's in there? Let's see, where is it? Cupbearer and the baker. So he was imprisoned them in the house of the captain of the guard in the same facility where Joseph was confined. So Pharaoh was enraged with his two officials. That's all it says. He was enraged, puts him in prison. So Pharaoh's not like, I don't know why he's enraged, but it's a cupbearer and a baker. So I guess he just had a bad meal. I don't really know what happened there, but he was ticked off enough to send them both to prison, which is interesting moving on down the road and how Pharaoh gave, how Joseph gets favor with this dude, because this dude's so angry that he just throws his, whatever, people in prison.
Well, so they were trusted people.
Huh?
The cupbearer was, he was trusted.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean, so something bad had to have happened,
So the cupbearer, is he the one that drank first?
Yes.
The Hebrew would Cyrus. The Hebrew word Cyrus was used here of these two men and of Potiphar normally means eunuch, but evidence from, I'm just reading some extra text here. Akkadian text shows that in early times the title was used. The title was talking about. Oh, he's talking about officials. Okay, never mind. I'll have to scratch that part out of this episode. I was reading something else. All right.
The cupbearer should be the one who tastes everything before the Pharaoh does.
Yes. Okay. So let's get into the dreams that he. Let's see. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. Who did it first? Both the cupbearer and the baker of the kings were confined in the prison on the same night. Each man had a dream and had its own meeting. Verse 6. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were looking depressed. So he wasn't living in the same prison walls with them. He came to them in the morning. So I don't know if he got his own special room or what, being the in charge. I guess he did. I don't know.
Maybe so.
So when Joseph came in the next morning, he saw that they were looking depressed. Verse 7. He asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in custody of the master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they told him, "We both had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph responded, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me. Tell them to me." Was that a deal back then? If you had a dream, you had to have somebody interpret it, or you wanted, like, if I have a dream, I don't go around looking for somebody to interpret my dream.
Yeah. Now, yeah. So I wondered about that because it always seems like there's some sort of significance. They believed that there was some significance in that, and so I don't know if that's a rule or whatever it is, but there was something about them. And Joseph said that that God interprets dreams, so let me do that. Let me be that intermediator for you. They believe something about them. But yeah, you're right. I don't. Every once in a while I'll have some weird dream and tell my wife about it, and but it's nothing ever significant.
So I've had some. Yeah, I've had some pretty weird ones too, and I've written them down because they have divine implications. And I talk to my daughter has discernment, and I've got some discernment, and I've got some people that I know that kind of that I can lay stuff like that down on, and I've had some things, and really for a period of time there when I was probably in my lowest struggles of my internal self, as I was writing the book and everything, is I really had some dreams that kind of made a lot of like divine spiritual sense in what they were saying, and so I would write them down in detail and then have conversations with my people about these dreams, and not that they would interpret the dream, but they would certainly say, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and then it was interesting because I would have like 2 or 3 dreams that when you combine them together, it's like, ooh, that makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of scary. But individually, they were like, yeah, I don't know about that. But then you're like, well, 2 days ago you had this. So anyway, but I didn't go looking for an interpreter for them, so
no,
they will.
Well,
so verse,
no,
yeah.
Well, no, I was going to say, dream. God does use dreams, and I believe in that. We're seeing that He's doing that all over the Muslim world right now.
Yeah. That's a big thing right now. Muslims are seeing Jesus coming to them in dreams like nothing else.
Yeah, by the thousands every day.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, verse 9. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. I don't really want to go into these dreams. There's a lot of things you're talking about, these different dreams. But the cupbearer, Joseph interpreted the cupbearer's dreams, and he interpreted the baker's dreams, and both of them came true, right? One got killed, and one got to live and was restored back into the king's or the Pharaoh's court there. And Joseph was right about both of them. And of course, as he's, it's the, which one is it? Let's go back. It's the,
I think the cupbearer, is the one that lives, and the baker is the one that dies.
Okay. So baker dies, cupbearer lives. And then Joseph replies, this is its meaning, blah, blah, blah. Verse 20, I'm jumping down here a little bit. On the 3rd day of Pharaoh's birthday, so he gave a feast to all his servants, lifted up his head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker in the midst of his servants. Verse 21, he restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so that he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had predicted. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him because he told them
Yeah.
Remember me. Remember me.
Yeah. Remember me when you go to Pharaoh. Yeah.
Yeah. But he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And two
He was
more
so
years goes
excited.
by. Yeah.
He was so excited he got to live.
Yeah.
He forgot all
Yeah.
about
Forgot
everything that
all
happened
about
up
it.
till
Yeah.
then. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Whew, I got a job to do. I'm a cupbearer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we get into chapter 41. And this is Joseph. Again, he's been forgot about at the end of 2 years. Verse 1 of chapter 41. At the end of 2 full years, Pharaoh had a dream. It was 2 full years, but when the cupbearer. I got to wonder, did Joseph ever try to get word to the cupbearer? Hey, can you send a message to the cupbearer for me? Yeah, I mean, that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
Hey, can you,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, maybe
Hey,
just
it's been
send
a
this here?
while. It's been,
Take this piece of paper to the cupbearer next time you see him, right? I mean, the
yeah.
prison
Yeah.
warden might have the option to see him at some point. I don't know.
Yeah. You would
It's
think.
like,
Yeah.
but 2
Yeah.
years. But that, so verse 39, verse 23 of chapter 40 to verse 1 of chapter 41 is 2 full years that scripture doesn't even talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
How, like, was that miserable for Joseph? Was he distraught? Was he upset? Was he still full of life because the Lord was with him? Was he still anticipating the Lord rescuing him? What was going on, and what do you think was going on in Joseph's mind?
Well, I think that after a few days, that I would be looking for that cupbearer.
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here. The note that you're talking about, that would have been, after 2 or 3 days, I'd be like, hey, can you somebody get word to somebody and get word back to me somehow, some way, because I'd like to know what's going on. Yeah. And then it's silent for all this time. I cannot imagine. I know what would be going through my mind. I'll hang dog and woe is me, and it's all terrible. But if we're going to look back at Joseph in his life, he has always conducted himself in a way that is honorable and that pleases God. Not that he never had a down day, not that he was ever depressed about anything or anything like that, but at the end of the day, I think what we see is that he's faithful. He remains faithful through all of that. I don't know how, but he remained faithful through all that.
I mean, so he's already in charge of the prisoners. Sounds like he has his own room. So it's not like he's going to get promoted. He probably doesn't. I mean, he's a prisoner when it all comes down to it. So he probably doesn't do any work around Pharaoh or around any of Pharaoh's people.
No.
He's probably restricted to the prison, even though he is in charge. I don't know. I don't know how that was laid out. Maybe some biblical scholar can jump in here and comment somewhere and tell us what we're missing here. I don't know. But for 2 years, man, I can't imagine that's a long time. I know it can go by fast. Like when, if you're 2 years away from retirement, it goes by fast. But
they didn't have TV. They didn't have TV privileges. Just sitting there in a cell. Yeah.
Limited screen time was probably a deal there. They had to kind of squash the screen time.
Yeah, squash the screen time. I doubt they had weights out in the rec yard, all that. I mean, I don't think that there was any sort of an organization that was checking on the welfare of the prisoners.
Yeah. No. Well, Joseph was. That was it.
Well, that was it. But I don't. But what authority really did he have to? Hey, these conditions could be a little bit better for these guys.
Yeah.
Probably not happening. Yeah.
So 2 full years, Pharaoh then had a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I guess culturally, that's what you do. You have a dream, find somebody to interpret it. He was standing by the Nile. 7 fine-looking fat cows were coming up out of the Nile. They grazed in the reeds. Then 7 bad cows came and they ate up the 7 good cows. Now, I don't know about you, man, but when I read these stories like this, I think of VeggieTales. Yeah. Because the VeggieTales episode is just, I mean, it's got these scrawny little skinny cows that eat up the big cows, and this is the Little Joe episode. Oh, Little Joe. Oh, Little Joe. Anyway, if you never saw that or not, they do this story as if Joe was in the Old West, and it's really good. Go look it up if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I can. Yeah, I've seen some of them.
Go look up VeggieTales to Joseph's story, little Joe.
Okay.
Man, you will never think of this story the same way again. It's great. I love it. Anyway, and that's the way I think about it too. I think of Potiphar's wife, the way they illustrated it. I think of him. I mean, it's all
Yeah, that's good.
that's how this story goes in my brain is VeggieTales. Anyway,
And we have to become like the little children so we can understand.
it's so I can
Faith like
understand
a little
and so I
kid.
can remember.
Yes, he can remember. There you go. Yeah.
All right, so then he went to sleep again. Verse 5 had another one, 7 heads of grain, healthy, good-looking ones, and 7 heads of grain that were thin and burned up were sprouting up after them. The thin heads swallowed up the heavy heads. We all know what this dream's about, right? 7 years of so the call. So he's like got this problem going on. He's like, I don't know anybody that can interpret dreams. Then verse 9, then the cupbearer, chief cupbearer, said to Pharaoh, today I recall my failures. Pharaoh was enraged with his servants, and he put me into prison in the house of the captain of the guards, and me and the chief baker. We each had a dream one night, and each of us had a dream with its own meaning. Now a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard, was with us there, and we told him our dreams, and he interpreted the meaning of each of our respective dreams. Now, 2 years later, he's like, oh yeah, this dude Joseph can help you.
Yeah. Wow.
So it came to pass that he said, Pharaoh restored to me my office, but he impaled the baker. Verse 14, Pharaoh summoned Joseph, and Joseph interprets the dreams. Pharaoh's impressed with the interpretation, and thus elevates Joseph in Egypt. What does he elevate? What does he get elevated to?
Oh man. Well, hey. Well, first, do you think that Joseph stared down the cupbearer if he saw him? He walks in the room, he's like, dude, that was 2 years ago. He like just stares him down, or is it?
You think he looked at him and went, bro?
Yeah, bro. What in the heck? Oh, I've been here for 2 years. You told me you're gonna, yeah. Wow. But yeah. So.
Oh man, I know. I'm with you. I
Gets,
can't imagine being in the room.
No. So because he interprets that dream, he gets elevated to prime minister in a sense. He's the second in command over all of Egypt and gets put in control of basically everything, which is mind-boggling to me. But obviously, Joseph had an intellect, had wisdom that not just Pharaoh saw, and because I can't imagine it's just that. Okay, wow, you interpret the dream, so poof, and maybe it did happen that way. Maybe God orchestrated it that way. But you would think that there would have been something, like, okay, can somebody tell me a little bit about Joseph? What is there more to this guy? I don't know if that happened or not, but there was something that was seen in him that gave Pharaoh the confidence to put him in charge over everything.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see the same thing we saw earlier. So look in verse 37. We're still in chapter 41. This is the advice that Joseph gave to Pharaoh. So you need to find a wise dude that can help you kind of get through these good years and these bad years. And so verse 37, this advice made sense to Pharaoh and all his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find a man like Joseph, one in whom the Spirit of God is present? Now, we've already kind of mentioned that before, where the prison warden and Potiphar kind of saw that God was with him, right? And so now we have Pharaoh himself who's saying, can we find a man like Joseph, one in whom the Spirit of God is present? Like he sees something in Joseph too that he attributes to God, right? So that tells me that probably Joseph didn't go in there and go, the cupbearer, bro.
Yeah.
That's probably not what Joseph did. He probably went in there at a very humble kind of, I'm here to serve you attitude, whatever you need. And so verse 39, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, because God has enabled you to know all this, there is no one as wise and discerning as you are. You will oversee my household and all my people and will submit to your commands. Only I, the king, will be greater than you. Now, drop back to what we talked about earlier, which was last episode. and that is that he was sold. Maybe it was this episode. I can't remember. It's been so long. He was sold to Potiphar from the Midianites. So Potiphar was what? Second in command,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So now Joseph is second in command.
Yeah.
So Potiphar's wife made this false accusation against him, and Potiphar put him into prison. And we've seen God take Potiphar and replace him with Joseph.
Yep. Yep.
I'm like, man.
Yeah. The story in Esther, not the same thing, but, somebody who was over somebody who had ill plans for somebody, but then that person gets elevated over them. God has a way of working that kind of stuff out. And I remember hearing a story that from a pastor that was telling it, that said that somebody had come to them, and a woman in his congregation had said that, and I'm struggling with this job. I've got a terrible boss, and they're just a tyrant, and I can't ever seem to do anything right. And, he's really not that good at his job, and on and on and on. He said, I think I want to quit, and he said, well, don't quit. You actually enjoy the job that you have, the work that you do. Stay in your job, work like you're working for God, pray for that man, and then just see what happens. And then she starts doing that, and she's just trying to faithfully serve and work and all that. And a month later, that guy gets fired, and she gets elevated to his position.
Yeah. Hannah's prayer. Remember Hannah's prayer? So Hannah's prayer was a role reversal kind of prayer. Make the least of these the greatest. Make the greatest of these the least, right? We see that here. We see that here. We're seeing Joseph, the least of these being brought to be the greatest.
Yeah.
And the greatest are being knocked down through this. And that's like only God can do that, I think.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I could tell you that, like, if this were me in my life, like, none of this would happen to me. That's it's not the kind of stuff that happens to me, right?
No, me either. Yeah.
So, like, only God can do this kind of role reversal thing like that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because first off, for somebody who is in that role, it's not natural for them to want to give that leadership role. It's not natural for them to want to just give that up. It's got to be orchestrated by God. Absolutely. It just, if there's so many, or so few servant leaders in the world today. And I think I actually think there's a lot of lessons that can be gained, through all of these stories about just servant leadership, because I think that to a large degree that's what Joseph has shown. He's a servant leader.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So back in chapter 37, we first started learning about him. He was 17 years old. Now, verse 46 of chapter 41, he's 30 years old when he starts serving for the king. So 13 years have passed, which kind of makes me, I don't know. There's no timeline on a lot of this stuff. So how long was he a servant for Potiphar? How long was he in prison total? The only really thing that we know about is 2 years from the time the cupbearer went back to the work for the king before he finally remembered him. So we got 13 years. So he's grown up, 30-year-old man. That's still young. I mean, compared to me, it's young.
Yeah.
So
me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Still 30-year-old guy. We know that there is about 12 years, I think, between right now and when his family starts to coming back in the middle of the drought, near the end of the drought years.
Yeah, because it's about 20 years or so, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, there's 7 years of good crop, and then there's 7 years of famine, and I think that's 14 together. But I think they come a couple years before the end of the first famine. I think.
Yeah. Well, to me, that is kind of once again shows that God's timing is way different than ours.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, you and I and Joseph probably would have preferred that some of this happen a little quicker.
Yeah. All right, so verse 49, Joseph stored up a vast amount of grain, like the sands of the sea, until he stopped measuring it because it was impossible to measure. That's how much grain he stored up. Two sons were born to Joseph before the famine came. Let's move on. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh. Here we go. The 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. There was a famine in all of the lands, but throughout the land of Egypt there was food. When all the land of Egypt experienced the famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh said to all the people of Egypt, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." While the famine was all over the earth, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. The famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. People came, verse 57, people came from every country. They came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe throughout the earth. From every country. He stored up for Egypt. They're coming from all over the place trying to get stuff. And then verse 42, the ultimate revenge begins. Guess you
Right.
could call it that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt. He said to your sons, "Why are you looking at each other?" He said, "Look, I hear there's grain in Egypt. Go down there, buy grain for us so that we may live and not die. Why are y'all sitting around here twiddling your thumbs?" So 10 of his brothers went down. So 10 of Joseph's brothers, that's 1 through 10. That's leaving Benjamin at home. Joseph being number 12. They went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's little brother Benjamin. Joseph was ruler of the country. We're going to move on down a little bit. And this is where it gets pretty strange here. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger to them. And they spoke to them, and then he spoke to them harshly. He said, "Where do you come from?" They answered, "From the land of Canaan to buy grain for food." So, this is important. Right before that, verse 6, Joseph was the ruler of the country, the one who sold grain to the people of the country. Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph's dreams come into reality here.
Yeah. Wow.
Why do you think he was so harsh to them? You think it's for revenge?
Man, yeah, I think there's a little bit of that, but I just don't think he's at a point where he wants to reveal everything to them, and I think he's got to get to a point because he wants to see Benjamin, he wants to end up seeing his dad again, and all that stuff, and so he's doing this, and I think he's making it difficult on them. I do think it's partially for that. Kind of a repayment, maybe. That would be me. That would be me. When I've read this in the past, honestly though, I have looked at that and gone, that's a little out of character from at least what I think of Joseph. Why has he been so hard on him? Because he seems to be somebody who is faithful, somebody who is probably honors God. Obviously, he honors God with his life and what he does. And for him to be kind of doing that is, I think, a little bit out of his character. So I don't know why else he would do that. Obviously, to bring to fruition what ends up having to happen. But at the very beginning of it, that's what it seems like, is that he's okay. Here they are. I'm gonna make them sweat. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think when I read these verses about all he does to his brothers, first of all, I think it's hilarious. I think God has a sense of humor, I think, and so he makes them, hide some stuff in their satchel and sends them back and all sorts of stuff. I think that there's a little bit of him that enjoys the revenge side, but I really think that his point here in doing all of this is he needs to know, like, have they changed? And I think that Joseph is so in tune with God too. So if we look at 1 Samuel 16:7, when Samuel goes to find the king, the next king of Israel, right? So Saul is like God's like, I'm done with you, Saul, and sends
Mm-hmm.
Samuel out to go to Jesse's family and find the son of Jesse, and find this dude. So Jesse passes all of his sons in front of Samuel, and God's like, no, 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 right? So Samuel finally goes, look, and God tells Samuel, it's like, I don't look at what I don't. He says, I don't look at what I look at. What? What's the answer? I don't look
Yeah.
at.
I don't look at the outside. I look at the heart. The
I
inside.
look at
Yeah.
the heart. And I
Yeah.
think Joseph is getting that word from God right now, and he's like, I need to look in the heart, right? I can't just outright tell him, hey, I'm your brother, and I'm going to take care of you, because I'll never know exactly what you
Mm-hmm.
truly are like in the heart. Has your heart
Mm-hmm.
changed? Have you guys changed or not? So he accuses
Yeah.
them. Are you spies? All this. It makes him do all these things and jumps through all these hoops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goes
Yeah.
back. Bring your brother. Bring your father. All this other stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that he's. I think there might be some. He's having fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I know I
see that.
would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Making them sweat. Yeah. No, but
but
I
I
love
think
that, Jeff. I love that. I think that's a great way to look at that, and you're probably right. Yeah. I think there's a lot of that. I do believe that there's some testing involved that he's doing along the way. Are they going to be truthful? Are they going to, revert back to their, shenanigans? Because hopefully, and we do end up seeing that they are a little bit older, they are a little bit wiser, they are a little bit more mature for the most part. And so I think that what he does to kind of string them along and do the things that he does, I think you're absolutely right. It's a way of testing them to see what their heart is about. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with that.
and they go through so much
Mm-hmm.
of what Joseph is asking them to do that it's literally a sacrifice for them. He says, you're going to have to bring
Yeah.
Benjamin back. You're
Yeah.
going to have to bring your little one back. Well, that's hard, because now you're going to have to rip Benjamin away from Jacob. So they argue about that, right? And it's like, look, for the betterment of our family, this is what we have to do. We have to do something we hate to protect our family. They're trying to convince Jacob of these things, right? So they pull through. They do everything Joseph has asked them to do. And I think that's where he finally starts to see, they've gone well above and beyond. They haven't tried to steal it. They haven't tried to rob me. They haven't tried to do anything inappropriate. They've bent over backwards. They've done everything that, even when I hid stuff in the bag, they're like, dude, we didn't do that. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
It wasn't us. And anyway, verse 22, Reuben said to them, didn't I say to you, don't sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. So now we must pay for shedding his blood. I mean, we're still talking about Joseph all these years later.
Yeah.
Verse 23, now they did not know that Joseph could understand them, for he was speaking through an interpreter. Verse 24, he turned away from them and he wept. And when he turned around and spoke to them again, he had Simeon taken from them and tied up before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain. This is him testing them again. And then we get all the way down to they have to come back. They have to go get Benjamin. Chapter 43. Now the famine was severe in the land. They finished eating the grain they had brought from Egypt. Their father said to them, return, buy us more. And Judah said to them, the man solemnly warned us, you will not see my face unless your brother is with you. This is where they argue with Jacob a little bit. It's like, send our brother with us. We'll go down and buy grain. But if you will not send him, we won't go down, because the man said to us, you will not see this again. So Israel said, why did you bring this trouble on me, telling me the man had one more brother? Anyway, they go back and forth. Finally, I'm trying to get to where they actually head back. So the men took these gifts, and they took double the money with them along with Benjamin. Verse 15, then they hurried down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the servant who was over his household, bring the men to the house, slaughter an animal, prepare it. The men will eat with me at noon. And the man did just as Joseph said, and he brought the man into Joseph's house. Verse 18, they were afraid. And they said, we are being brought because of the money that was returned in our satchel last time. all this other stuff. So they approached the man who was in charge of Joseph's household and spoke to him in the interest of the house. They said, "My lord, we did indeed come down the first time to buy food, but then we came to the place where we spent the night. We opened our satchels and found all this money. We didn't do this."
Mm-hmm.
Verse 23, everything is fine. The man in charge of Joseph's household told him, "Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasures in your sacks, and I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The servant in charge brought the men to Joseph's house, gave them water and washed their feet, gave them food, and they got their gifts, and they got ready for Joseph's arrival at noon. Verse 26, when Joseph came home, they presented him with gifts they had brought inside, and they bowed down on the ground before him. So they're bowing again.
And again, yeah.
And he asked them how they were doing. They said, "Is your aging father well? The one you spoke about, is he alive still?" And your servant, "Our father is well," they replied. "He is still alive." They bowed down to him humbly. And when Joseph looked up and he saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother that you told me about?" And then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Joseph hurried out, for he was overcome by affection for his brother, and was at that point of tears. So he went to his room and wept there. So this is like, I think Joseph's starting to see now the change
Mm-hmm.
in his brothers, and I
Yeah.
don't think that, I think that's what he's crying about.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Not
oh, I
so
do
much.
too.
I mean, yes, he's happy to see his brothers, and that's great. But I think what he's really emotional about is his relationship with them being restored, because their hearts have been changed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And the what had been broken for so long, God is restoring. That's a that's something that is remarkable. Makes us feel great, and we praise God for those times when we have a broken relationship in our families. We've all, I'm assuming you do too, because I do, and most families have some sort of dysfunction, some sort of part of their family where there's been difficulty, and but when you're able to reconcile those differences and come back together and love each other and all that, that's extraordinarily meaningful, and it touches the heart. And so I think that there's that. I think he's seen that, but I also think that he sees that God is once again restoring them back. And I think we can kind of see a little bit of that, the foretelling, where, because God is going to give people an opportunity to be back in right relationship with Him with the sacrifice of Jesus.
So Joseph tests him again, puts his cup in Benjamin's sack, says, whoever we find the cup in, cup's missing, dudes. Whoever's in, it's gonna be my servant forever. Find it in Benjamin. Judah starts begging. Let's see, where am I at? Verse 21, then you told your servant, bring him down here to me so I can see him. We said to my lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves his father will die. But you said to your servants, if your youngest brother does not come down with you, you will not see my face again. And when we returned your servant to your father, we told him those words. And then our father said, go back with us, buy a little food. We replied, we cannot go down there without the youngest brother. So they're telling him the same story, like this is what happened. And then verse 27, then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife gave me 2 sons. The first disappeared. And I said, he has surely been torn to pieces. I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and an accident happens to him, then you will bring down my gray hair in tragedy to the grave. So Jacob's like, I've already lost one. I'm not going to lose another. Why do you think Joseph's picking on Benjamin here?
I think to me, well, first off, I think he wants to see him. He wants to see that he's alive and that he's doing well, because he's he's blood relative to him. He's his only blood brother. So he has an affection for him in that regard. And so, I think it's important for him to see him. I think it's important to see that hopefully his brothers treated Benjamin differently than they did Joseph. Because then I think that going back to what you said, I think there's something to that, and that maybe that this would indicate, okay, well, they didn't treat him the same way. They're different now and have been different than the way they treated me.
Yeah. So, verse 33, so Judah's still arguing here. He's like, so now please let your servant remain as my Lord's slave instead of this boy.
Mm-hmm.
As for the boy, let him go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if this boy is not with me? I couldn't bear to see my father's pain. Now, is this a change from the brothers that Joseph remembers? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They didn't care about him or
No.
what Jacob was going to feel about his loss,
No.
but they are determined, like they have seen the pain in Jacob's eyes and in his heart for the loss of Joseph. They're not about to let that happen again with Benjamin.
Yeah.
And this is where chapter 45 starts. This is where verse 1, Joseph was no longer able to control himself before all his attendants. So he cried out, make everyone go out from my presence. No one remained with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. He wept loudly. The Egyptians heard it, and Pharaoh's household heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? And his brothers could not answer him because they were dumbfounded before him.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Cannot imagine. He would have looked differently, right? I mean, obviously he would have grown up and he'd have been wearing
13 years later, or more than that now.
Later. Yeah.
No, now it'd be like, it'd be about 20 something years later.
Yeah. So obviously he would have looked different, but he would not have been wearing, I'm assuming, he would not have been wearing like Hebrew type clothing. He'd have been wearing Egyptian clothing and have been adorned and however they adorn themselves, all those different things. And so he wouldn't have looked anything like what they left behind or what they sold off. So yeah, I can't imagine what they're thinking. And they've had each one of these travels. I think it's like a 2-week time frame. Each time to go back and forth each time 2 weeks, and and so they've been through a lot to get to this point. But it's a remarkable story, of God's faithfulness and reconciling this family, and His provision in all of this. Obviously they're going to be provided for.
So this is why verse 5 right here in chapter 45, verse 5, this is where I get the idea that Joseph, through all of this, which is probably why God didn't put a lot of feeling and emotion in Joseph throughout this story, because this was probably his mentality the whole time. Verse 5 now, do not be upset and do not be angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me ahead of you to preserve life.
Yeah.
For these past 2 years, there has been famine in the land. So he's only 2 years into it. And for 5 more years, there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me ahead of you to preserve you on the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in other words, and it gets down there a little bit later, what you've meant for evil, God used for good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have to wonder throughout the entire thing, do you think that Joseph even had an inkling that at some point God was going to take this horrible stuff and be good? Do you think that through that whole journey of being sold into slavery and all the other stuff, that Joseph even remotely tied that to his dreams of his family bowing down to him? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I don't know how he could have really. I do believe that he believed in what he interpreted. I don't know if he understood exactly how it was going to come to pass. I don't know if he understood that, but it's obvious that he was a faithful follower, that he stayed true to God, and what God wanted him to do. I think that he realized oftentimes in real time, what that God was with him and was setting things before him, and he is right here. I think that was not. It wasn't just something that just kind of came to mind. It's like, oh wow, this is why all these things happen, and now I'm just now seeing all this stuff. I think that he could see some of these things again in real time, and that allowed him to reach this point and say, okay, now I finally understand it all.
Yeah.
I could see that God was working, but now I understand it. And we've all been there, right? We didn't understand everything. We knew that God was doing something, but we didn't understand it all until there's a certain point. You go, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. So again, I think there's a lot to unpack with Joseph, and just in 2 episodes, I don't think we unpacked a whole lot.
Right.
But I think we see, because that's really all I wanted to hit on this, I guess. I see a grander plan that God has for a man who was rejected, who was not favored by his siblings, and who was put through garbage. I mean, literally into a cistern, sold into slavery to somebody else, and falsely accused after trying to do the right thing. And I mean, it's all the different things that happened to him, for him to remain faithful for the Lord and just be diligent in doing what he's supposed to do. God restored him to the point where he was able to use him to save his family. And I know Scripture, God did this to preserve you. Think of what happens next. Israelites multiply in the land, ultimately leading us to a new Pharaoh that didn't like them, made them become slaves. And then what? And then we have Moses, and then when Moses lives 40 years as an Egyptian, goes to 40 years out in the wilderness, comes back and leads his people out of Israel for 40 years. The Exodus, right? This is all leading up to that.
Yeah.
Which none of that could have happened if Joseph wasn't abused. So, right. I mean, man.
Right. Well, you mentioned a minute ago how he was rejected, and he was rejected by his own. Yeah. And that how hard is that? Yeah. It wasn't that some neighbor kids rejected him, or the general community rejected him. He was rejected by his own people. And who does that sound like? Jesus was rejected by his own people. And so, I think about that, quite a bit, when I think about Jesus and all that he went through, all the, everything, which is obviously there's some similarities in this, of course. And I think that's one of the bigger points of it.
I mean, even before Jesus comes on scene, the Israelites keep rejecting God.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
It's a repeating theme.
Yeah.
But what's crazy about that is that's still happening today, even with us. I mean, we continue to trust ourselves from time to time and not trust God where we should.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Absolutely.
Final words, final thoughts?
Oh man, Jeff, I appreciate it. These are awesome. This is an awesome story, and there's so much tied up in Joseph. I think you're right. I mean, to try to wrap it all up in 2 episodes is almost impossible. But I think we did a pretty good job of hitting the high points, and you did a great job of kind of leading us through that. And but man, I think of God at the end of the day, God's resourcefulness, God's faithfulness to us, and God's provision for us. Always. I think it's a great story of that, and his desire to reconcile.
Yep. And again, I'll say, if you haven't seen the VeggieTales version of this, go watch the VeggieTales version. But
all right, I'll do it.
In all honesty, though, if you haven't literally read Genesis 37 to 45-ish in a while, go read that. I mean, he throws in chapter 38. Seems like an odd throw in when he talks about Tamar and Judah and everything. But go read it. And I'll tell you what, if you find the reason that God put chapter 38 in that spot where he did, I have my ideas about it, but if you find the reason why he put Judah and Tamar right there in the middle of the Joseph story, plop it into a comment somewhere. See if you can enlighten us. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, there you go. Love to hear it.
I heard a seminary professor explain why that was dropped in one time, and I thought it was interesting kind of thought process. Anyway, all right, man.
All right.
Well, let's grab another Bible character later, and let's get some guests on this show. And for the rest of you, glad to be back. We are excited. I think this is the first of many series that I think we're going to do. I just love digging into the Word, love digging into Scripture, and I think Danny and I are going to do a lot of that. And probably even at times we may have to bring in somebody who's a little more of an expert than we are. So
yeah,
we can do that.
Wouldn't take much on my end, Jeff. I'm
to find somebody?
To find somebody that more expertise. Yeah, I'm just a regular dude over here. So yeah. All
right, man.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Folks, if you want to learn more about who Jesus is, visit us at thetestamentpod.com. That's thetestamentpod.com. And click on the gospel message at the top of the page. Also, you can click on the Testament Podcast tab and learn more about our podcast and see what our most recent episodes are that we've launched. In addition, we're always looking for guests who want to brag on God. So please send yourself or someone you know to thetestamentpod.com and drop us a line with your interest, or email us at thetestamentpod@gmail.com. We'll send you all the information we need in order to book you for an interview. Remember, do your part. Help us get these testimonies out there. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and then like and share our posts so your friends can see what we're doing too. So thanks everybody for listening. Bye.